I've lived on the same 5-acre patch of dirt for over 30 years. My nearest neighbor used to be a pecan tree. Then the HOA moved in like ants at a picnic, slow at first, then suddenly everywhere, building up cookie-cutter houses where cows used to graze and naming it something ridiculous like Whispering Pines Estates. There ain't a single pine tree whispering out here, unless you count the rotting fence post that creaks in the wind. It started on a Tuesday. Weather was fine, sky was clean, and I'd just finished baling hay all morning. My old John Deere, bless her worn-out green hide, had done the job like she always did. Engine still rumbles like a sleepy bear, and she's got rust on every corner, but that tractor's part of the family. She's older than my ex-wife and twice as reliable. So, I parked her out front. Not on the road. Not blocking a driveway. Just under the big oak tree beside my gravel path, where I've parked her for 2 decades without so much as a raised eyebrow. She needed a rest, same as me. I didn't even shut her down right away. Let her idle while I went inside to get a sweet tea. About 10 minutes later, I heard it. The screech of sneakers on gravel and the rapid-fire tapping of angry acrylic nails on a clipboard. That's when I saw her. HOA President Karen Reinhardt in full suburban armor. Bright pink visor, tennis skirt like she was about to compete in Wimbledon, and an expression that looked like she'd just sucked a lemon through a straw. She didn't even knock. Just stood at the edge of my porch like I was radioactive, and waved her clipboard in the air like it was a holy relic. "Mr. Lanes," she said, voice sharp enough to skin a deer. "That vehicle is an eyesore. Now, I've been called a lot of things in my time, stubborn, set in my ways, even delightfully uncooperative, but never has anyone dared to insult Bessie. That's the tractor's name, by the way. Named her after the mule we had when I was a kid. Both of 'em were too stubborn to die." I took a long sip of my tea, leaned against the porch post, and raised an eyebrow. "Didn't realize working for a living counted as offensive now," I said. She flinched, probably from the dust Bessie was still kicking up. "This is a residential neighborhood, Mr. Lanes. We have standards. The HOA agreement clearly states all machinery and unsightly vehicles must be stored out of view." "Out of view of who?" I asked. "The squirrels." Karen didn't laugh. HOA folks never do. Humor's a foreign concept to them, like letting things go or minding their business. She handed me a printed warning, the ink still warm. "You have 48 hours to remove the vehicle or face escalating fines." I took the paper, read it slowly. It listed things like visual disturbance, community aesthetic, and my personal favorite, non-compliance with harmony standards. I looked her square in the eye. "Karen, Bessie's the most harmonious thing on this property. You just don't recognize country music when you hear it." She spun around and walked off like she'd just won a battle. I swear, I heard her mutter something about hillbilly holdouts as she stomped away. I thought that'd be the end of it. I figured she'd have a mimosa and move on. But the next day there was a photo of my tractor stapled to my mailbox with the word "unacceptable" stamped across it in big red letters. The HOA newsletter called it a community concern, and listed my address under a section called Problem Properties. Problem property. Me. I've lived on this land since before these houses even had plumbing. My barn has more history in its splinters than their HOA charter has in its bylaws. But now, suddenly, I was the problem. That night, I took a long walk down my fence line, boots crunching through dry grass, thinking about all the changes I'd watched roll in like a summer thunderstorm. Vinyl fences where split rail used to be. Backyard fire pits with fake logs. And now they were coming after my tractor like it was graffiti. I wasn't mad. Not really. Mad's too much effort. But something inside me shifted. Like an old dog raising his head when he hears a coyote in the distance. I'd been patient. I'd tried to let them be. But when they start telling me what can and can't rest on my own land, that's a different song entirely. I gave Bessie a pat on the hood the next morning and fired her up. She coughed like she always does before settling into her usual low grumble. I drove her in a slow loop around the property, one more time, just to remind myself why I loved this place. That afternoon, another letter came. This one was bolder. It included a list of daily fine accumulations and mentioned escalation procedures if I didn't comply. Karen had written a personal note in blue ink. "We're not above towing, Mr. Lanes." Towing. I actually chuckled at that. Good luck getting a tow truck big enough to drag Bessie anywhere without snapping an axle. But that was the moment I realized they weren't going to let this go. They were serious. They wanted Bessie gone. And me? I was just getting warmed up. By the time the second letter showed up, they'd gone full scorched earth. Certified envelope. Return address stamped with the HOA logo like it was some kind of government agency. You'd think I was smuggling livestock or running a moonshine still out of my barn. I opened it at the kitchen table with a butter knife. Inside were 4 neatly stapled pages of legal nonsense. Stuff about property values, bylaws, neighborhood beautification standards, and one line in bold red text that caught my eye. Failure to comply within 72 hours will result in administrative penalties and mandatory corrective action at owner's expense. Mandatory corrective action? I took a long sip of coffee and glanced out the window. There was Bessie, my green beauty, parked peacefully in the shade like she always had been. Quiet. Harmless. Covered in a fine layer of honest work and sun-bleached dignity. And yet, somehow, she was now public enemy number 1. Now I've always believed in keeping to myself. You leave me alone, I leave you alone. That's how it's always been done around here. But the HOA doesn't believe in that. They believe in meetings, dress codes for mailboxes, and using words like aesthetic cohesion. Still, I figured I'd give him one last chance. Just to say I tried. So I put on my good flannel, the one without grease stains, and showed up at the next HOA meeting. They were holding it at the community clubhouse, a stucco monstrosity that looked like a Taco Bell got ideas above its station. I walked in and instantly felt like a wolf in a chicken coop. Pastel sweaters. Designer sandals. Someone was serving cucumber water, for Pete's sake. I stood at the back, arms crossed, and waited until they opened the floor to community concerns. Karen spotted me right away. Her smile dropped like a possum in a well. "Mr. Lanes," she said, blinking like I was a hallucination. "We weren't expecting you." "I got your letters," I said. "Figured we ought to talk like neighbors." She gave me a tight nod and motioned to the podium. "You may have 2 minutes." I walked up front, boots echoing on their fancy laminate floor, and cleared my throat. "I've lived on my land since '92. Before this HOA ever existed. Before any of these homes were more than blueprints and big promises. That tractor out there, Bessie, is part of how I made a living, raised my kids, and kept this soil working." I looked around the room. Most folks avoided eye contact. A few younger ones looked confused. Probably didn't know what a PTO shaft even was. I'm not asking to run a farm fair on the front lawn. I'm just parking my tractor in the same spot it's always been. If that's suddenly illegal, well, I reckon something's gone a bit sideways. A woman in a silk scarf raised her hand like she was ordering in a courtroom. "But it's unsightly. I have to look at it every morning." I nodded slowly. "Ma'am, I have to look at your pink flamingo decorations and solar-powered butterfly spinners every time I drive by." But I never said a word, did I? That got a few chuckles. Karen didn't join in. "We have a community vision, Mr. Lanes," she said. "Your equipment doesn't align with our goals for visual unity." "Funny thing," I replied. "I didn't realize unity meant looking like every other cul-de-sac from here to Tulsa." That was it. Karen's smile turned icy. She reached into her folder and pulled out a document with a red tab. "This is your final warning. If the tractor is not removed within the next 48 hours, we will have it towed and charge your account for the cost." Now, I'm not a man prone to losing his temper. But something about the way she said, "your account," made my blood warm up like diesel in the summer sun. Like she thought she owned a piece of me. Like this HOA suddenly had dominion over land I'd fenced, plowed, and paid for with my own calloused hands. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just tipped my hat, said, "Well, I reckon I'll be seeing y'all soon," and walked out. The next day, they upped the ante. I woke up to a giant orange sticker plastered across Bessie's side panel, "Notice of violation." It was laminated like they thought I'd try to peel it off in shame. Then I saw the tow notice. Scheduled for Friday, noon sharp. They weren't bluffing. I spent that evening watching the sun set from my porch, thinking about all the ways I could fight this. Maybe I could get a lawyer. Maybe I could take them to court. Maybe I could write a strongly worded letter. But then I heard the distinct splush of a frog jumping into the pond, and something in me just settled. No more letters. No more meetings. No more debates. They wanted Bessie gone? Fine. But I was gonna make sure they'd never forget it. And I already knew exactly where she was going next. The morning before the tow was scheduled, I gave reasoning one last try. See, I'm not a fan of conflict. Never have been. I'd rather fix a broken gate than file a complaint. Rather shake hands than slam doors. But something about this whole tractor mess had me chewing on bitterness like it was jerky gone bad. Still, I figured I'd offer a compromise before things went sideways. I even wrote it down, neatly, on actual printer paper, something I usually only do when it's tax season or someone's died. My note said this: "Dear HOA Board, I understand you believe my tractor is a visual disturbance. Out of respect, I'm willing to move it behind the barn where it won't be visible from the road. I'd appreciate it if we could resolve this neighbor to neighbor without further conflict or expense. Sincerely, John Lanes." I signed it, folded it up, and hand-delivered it to their drop box at the clubhouse. Felt good doing it, like maybe we could all walk away with our dignity intact. But I should have known better. By mid-afternoon, I got a response. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a call. It was a post on the neighborhood app, the digital gossip board where HOA folks love to wag their fingers in public. Karen herself had written it, complete with emojis and thinly veiled sarcasm. "While we appreciate Mr. Lane's attempt to compromise, rules are rules. Agricultural machinery has no place in a residential community. We cannot allow one person's nostalgia to override community standard. The tractor must be removed or we'll proceed with enforcement. Red heart #community first." That last part, nostalgia, rubbed me raw. That tractor wasn't some antique lawn ornament. It was a part of my life. That machine had cleared storm debris, plowed garden rows, pulled neighbors' trucks out of ditches. Hell, I once gave a couple of local kids a hayride on it after the town parade. Nostalgia? No, ma'am. That was utility, legacy, backbone. And then came the kicker. Right below Karen's post, a few HOA cheerleaders chimed in. Comments like, "Maybe he should move to the countryside if he wants to keep farm junk around. This isn't Green Acres. Does it even run? Looks like it belongs in a scrapyard." Scrapyard. That was it. I sat there staring at my phone, fingers tight around my mug of black coffee. I could feel my ears go hot, not from rage, but from that particular brand of disbelief only city folk can trigger. The kind of disbelief that hits when someone with soft hands tells you your hard-earned life is out of place. That evening, I saw Karen walking her dog, some yappy designer breed with a rhinestone collar, right past my fence. She paused just long enough to take a photo of Bessie with her phone. Didn't even try to hide it. I stepped out onto the porch. "Evenin'," I said. She didn't answer. Just kept walking like I was furniture. It was clear then, reasoning wasn't gonna work. They didn't want peace. They wanted submission. They wanted to parade their authority around and watch me bow my head like I was just another lawn gnome in their precious HOA-approved gardens. I leaned against the porch post and watched the sun bleed across the sky like a split peach. Bessie stood under the tree, noble and silent. Her paint faded, sure. Her tires caked with dust. But still standing. Still mine. Then I got to thinking. If they wanted her gone so badly, wanted her out of sight, out of mind, erased from the picture, I could oblige. But not the way they expected. No quiet retreat. No shameful toe. If Bessie was leaving her spot, she was going out in style. That night, I made a few calls. One to my buddy Travis, who owns a landscaping business and keeps a flatbed trailer that can handle just about anything short of a tank. One to Ed, who used to be a pool contractor before he got out of the game and into whiskey making. He still had blueprints of the community pool from when he installed the filtration system 5 years ago. And one to my nephew Kyle, who's been itching for a good prank ever since he turned legal drinking age and bought himself a drone. We met behind my barn under the yellow light of a bug-riddled flood lamp and came up with a plan. Now let me be clear. I wasn't gonna break any laws. I wasn't gonna destroy anything. But I was gonna send a message. One they couldn't ignore. One they'd remember every time they dipped their HOA-certified toes into their precious community pool. I spent the rest of the night prepping Bessie. Checked the tires. Cleaned the engine filter. Gave her a fresh tank of fuel. I even wiped the dust off her hood and shined up the John Deere emblem like she was going to the county fair. "Big day tomorrow, girl," I said, patting the wheel. "Time to make a splash." Friday morning dawned hot and quiet. The kind of heavy stillness that wraps around you like a wet towel. No breeze, no birdsong, just the low hum of a world waiting for something dumb to happen. I'd barely finished my eggs when Kyle rolled up the gravel drive in his beat-up pickup, drone case riding shotgun. His hat was backward, sunglasses on, grinning like a kid who just lit a firecracker and tossed it under the porch. "You sure about this, Uncle John?" he asked. I nodded, sipping my coffee. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. At 10:15 a.m., Travis showed up with the flatbed trailer. Bessie climbed up it like she knew what we were doing. No hesitation, no fuss. Just a low, rattling growl as she rolled aboard, rust and steel glinting in the sun like battle armor. We strapped her down tight, covered her with a gray tarp, and hit the road. Now, the HOA clubhouse sits right in the middle of Whispering Pines Estates, centerpiece of their little empire. Fancy stucco walls, plastic pillars, and a pool so clean you'd think angels used it for baptisms. Karen and her crew host all their exclusive events there. Wine tastings, dog yoga, potlucks where nothing's seasoned. And that pool? Olympic length, pristine, lined with white lounge chairs and phony palm trees. I'd seen it from a distance plenty of times but never set foot near it. HOA folks liked it that way. Until today. We circled around the back, just like Ed's blueprints showed. There's a maintenance access path hidden behind the hedges, meant for landscaping trucks and chemical deliveries. Gates usually locked. But thanks to Ed, we had the code. At 11:42 a.m., we rolled in unnoticed, right as Karen and her committee were setting up a community smoothie social by the pool. They had speakers playing soft jazz. Folding tables covered in pastel tablecloth. A cooler full of kombucha. Perfect. Travis backed the trailer up to the shallow end. Kyle launched the drone and hovered it overhead, recording every second. I pulled the tarp off, climbed onto Bessie's seat, and fired her up. Vroom. Heads turned instantly. The HOA board froze mid-strawberry blend. Karen dropped her clipboard. One lady screamed like she'd seen a bear. But it was too late. I threw Bessie into gear, gave her a little throttle, and drove her right off the trailer. Now, Bessie's not built for ballet. She's loud, clunky, and built like a brick outhouse. But that morning, she glided with purpose. Turf tore under her wheels as she crossed the pool deck, knocking over a sign that said, "No food or drink beyond this point." And then, with the grace of a saint and the soul of a rebel, splash, she plunged into the pool. Water erupted like a geyser, waves crashing over the sides, chairs toppling, cucumber water flying through the air like confetti. Bessie didn't fully sink. She wedged in sideways, her back tires still spinning slightly above the surface like she was trying to paddle. For a moment it was dead quiet. Karen stood there soaked to the bone, mascara dripping, mouth open like someone unplugged her brain. Her designer dog was losing its mind, yapping and tangling its leash around her knees. I cut the engine and stepped off the pool deck, soaking wet from the waist down but grinning like a possum in a chicken coop. Karen finally found her voice. "What, in God's name, is wrong with you?" I shrugged. "Tried to hide the tractor like you asked. Figured this was the only place y'all wouldn't complain about visual disturbance. It's underwater now, no eyesore in sight." One of the other board members, a tall guy with a Bluetooth earpiece and cargo shorts, shouted, "You're gonna pay for this. This is vandalism." I pointed to the tire marks. "I didn't break the gate. Used the HOA's maintenance entrance. You folks left it open for contractors." Kyle's drone zipped in closer, catching Karen's horror from every angle. I could practically see the thumbnail for the YouTube video forming. HOA freaks out when farmer parks tractor in pool. The best part? I hadn't damaged a thing beyond their dignity. No cracked tiles. No broken pumps. Bessie was old, sure, but she didn't leak. It even helped me remove the fuel line just in case. Bessie was running on fumes and good intentions. But Karen? She was losing it. You'll be hearing from our lawyers. I pulled a laminated copy of the HOA's own community map from my back pocket. The one that showed the pool was technically on land that still belonged to the original property developer, not the HOA. Ed had dug it up during one of his whiskey-fueled deep dives. "This ain't your pool, Karen," I said. "And I've got the paperwork to prove it. You folks lease it seasonally. That means technically, I just drove my tractor onto private property with permission from the original landowner." Which was true. The developer's nephew still held the land deed and owed me a favor from years ago when I helped him fix a broken septic system during a storm. Karen looked like she was about to faint. One by one, the HOA board scattered, some filming, others shouting, and a few quietly leaving to pretend they'd never been there. I climbed back onto the trailer, boots squishing. Travis gave me a slow clap. Kyle landed the drone. We drove off, leaving Bessie floating like a war monument in the middle of HOA country. By the time I got back home, the neighborhood was already buzzing. Apparently, someone uploaded Kyle's drone footage before we even made it halfway down the road. A slow-motion clip of Bessie's cannonball into the pool went viral on local social media, shared by everyone from bored teenagers to retired veterans with too much time and too many opinions. The title? Farmer Parks Tractor in HOA Pool After Petty Dispute, and it's glorious. Over the next few days, I watched it all unfold from the comfort of my porch swing, sweet tea in hand and boots propped up on a hay bale. Bessie, of course, was towed out that evening by a couple of guys with wide eyes and a very confused winch. They didn't ask questions, just nodded respectfully and hauled her home like she was royalty returning from war. She's back now, resting under the oak where she belongs. I cleaned her up real good, even gave her a coat of polish for the first time in, well, ever. She earned it. As for the HOA? Let's just say the splash made more than just ripples. First, they tried damage control. Karen released an official community statement calling the incident a calculated act of rural rebellion that endangered public safety and violated the spirit of cooperative living. She mentioned emotional trauma, claimed the chlorine system would need to be spiritually cleansed. But it was too late. Every comment on their post was either a meme, a joke, or someone asking where to buy a miniature Bessie toy. Someone even edited the video to add patriotic music and slow-mo sparkles. Another looped Karen's horrified face into a GIF. The HOA board tried to meet in emergency session the next day, but only 2 members showed up. One of them quit halfway through and said he didn't sign up for tractor warfare. Karen? Well, she stopped walking her dog past my place. Word is she tried to call an emergency re-election for new HOA leadership. But the turnout was so low that she stepped down instead, citing hostile rural influences and unprecedented levels of stress. Can't say I lost sleep over that. Turns out a lot of the neighborhood folks were quietly on my side. Not everyone, of course. There'll always be someone who thinks their lawn is the center of the universe. But a surprising number of folks reached out. One guy, real estate agent named Mark, brought me a case of beer and said, "I didn't know we could do stuff like that." Another woman stopped by with a homemade pie and told me her husband used to work on a dairy farm. Said seeing Bessie in the pool made her laugh harder than she had in years. Funny thing is, I never set out to be some kind of folk hero. I just wanted to be left alone, to park my tractor on my land without getting paper cuts from HOA warnings. But once you push a man too far, once you start telling someone like me what belongs and what doesn't, what's an eyesore and what's appropriate, well, you'd better be ready for a little mud on your white picket fence. A few weeks after the splash heard round the neighborhood, the HOA quietly revised some of their policies. They updated the rules to clarify that vehicles used for land maintenance on lots exceeding 1 acre were exempt from visibility violations. They didn't mention me or Bessie by name, but everyone knew who that rule was for. And just like that, peace settled back over the land. I still get the occasional side eye from folks who think I embarrassed the neighborhood. But I also get waves, nods, and even a few thumbs-ups from the older folks. The ones who remember what this place looked like before the hedges were perfectly trimmed and the rules outnumbered the residents. One evening, about a month later, I saw a small kid riding his bike slow down near my property. He stopped at the edge of my driveway and just stared at Bessie for a solid minute. Then he looked at me, gave a shy grin, and asked, "Is that the pool tractor?" I chuckled. "That's her." His eyes got wide. That was awesome. And off he went, pedaling back toward his cookie-cutter cul-de-sac like he'd seen a legend. So now, when I look out at that tractor under the oak tree, I don't see an eyesore. I see a boundary. A line in the dirt. One that says, you don't get to rewrite the rules just because you bought a map. This land was here before the HOA. And it'll be here long after their bylaws are yellowing in a drawer no one reads. They tried to drown my way of life. So I returned the favor. Only difference is, I made a splash doing it.